So today on the show, I have Shelley Zalis. This is exactly where you need to come for credible life advice. You ask the questions, and we're going to answer them. It's so good to have you here. I've read so much about you already, so I feel like I kind of know you. Can you start by telling us a little bit about your story? I'm very curious, actually, to start at the place where you decided to start a company years ago that you've since sold in 2010. I just want to know about that moment before we get on to the big stuff that you're doing now.
You know, my journey has been so non-traditional and non-linear. And if you ask me if I would be where I am today, I am unscripted. This is the Unscripted podcast. I am the living and breathing model of unscripted. My whole journey has been unscripted, and I always talk about a heartbeat moment. It's not a cognitive moment where I have these aha moments of, oh, I'm going to rationalize and justify where I am and where I'm going, and I have this career path.
Yeah.
It's always been this heartbeat moment, a place that I feel, and that's what takes me to the next step in my career. So I started in market research over 36 years ago. A really long time ago. I hate saying that because it makes me feel like an old lady.
No,
but I feel that at every age, I really redefine myself based on, you know, where I am and where I'm going. And so I started in market research. Have you ever taken a survey on the internet?
Of course. Well, you have to do all these clinical surveys all the time when you're in training for what I do. So yeah, I've done a lot of them.
Okay, so I'm the mother of that invention. I pioneered online research, moving research from offline, from central location and telephone to the internet in a day and age where only wealthy men were online. So hardly a representative population.
How did you come up with the idea to do it?
So I've been in market research, and I was part of surveys from, you know, little old ladies filling out surveys in the mall, asking you questions and erasing the answers.
Were you sort of at a company in middle management doing this, helping the company do it?
Entry level. I started entry level, and then by the time I got to middle management, we were doing telephone and, you know, bigger, more quantitative research. And then I started doing website testing and testing 200-page, you know, ads on websites for Tampax and for, you know, CPG clients. And I woke up one day and I said, this is so strange. Why do we create websites to advertise in? We don't create TV shows to advertise in. So I started creating ad models for advertisers to migrate their content from websites to other people's sites. And that's when we started creating split screens and banners and skyscrapers and all kinds of ad formats on the internet. And then it was that moment where I thought, well, gosh, why don't we use a website to do research?
Right.
And so I was the first in the world to come up with the idea. And I always say, you know, it's a little scary because, you know, when you're the first, you lose. You don't have the money, you haven't built the ecosystem, no one believes it's right, you have to fail before you succeed. So my philosophy was always to be the first, the second, and the third. The first is always the innovator, the pioneer, the visionary, but you don't win. The second is the copycat. They copy everything that you've done, but they don't understand what's under the hood. The third is always the sweeper. You've now built an ecosystem. They know how to, you know, pick up from where you left off. They don't have to fail. They can just start with success right off the bat.
I love this.
They get, you know, the funding and they sweep. And so I always said to myself, especially when you're building the first, you got to be the first, the second, and the third if you want to win. So that was the story of my life. And I started a company called OTX. I was the only CEO, female CEO in the top 25 my whole career. I knew I thought differently than, you know, other leaders because there were no other with feminine perspective.
Yes.
One that really was a caregiver that led their company like a family, nurturing, empathetic, caring, feminine qualities, masculine qualities, linear, decisive, analytic,
right,
directive. And I built the fastest growing research company in the world in 9 short years and sold it 8 years ago to Ipsos, the third largest global research company in the world, and stayed there for 5 years running global innovation. And it was a very non-linear journey, but a very exciting one where I was creating the new norm and getting others to believe in it and follow and not look at what's not, but what is, imagining the possibilities. Because, if you're innovating and transforming, a whole ecosystem, you can't have a mindset of looking at everything that's wrong with it and the why nots. You got to look at the why yeses.
What's possible?
100%.
The first few years that you were doing it, was it hard to get people to buy into your vision? Was it hard to raise money? Did you go out and raise money? Did you use your own capital? I'm just so curious about those first couple of years.
It's really interesting because when I had this idea, I was at a research company and they told me it wasn't the right time. And I said, why don't we just migrate research from offline to online? And I was told it wasn't the right time because there was no representative population at the time. The only, sample we had access to was at the time to view video, broadband, was the at-home network, which was a long, long time ago. Yeah. And those were early adopters that actually have that. So it really wasn't the right time. And I remember going to a big trade association, a trade conference, and I was sitting next to the chief research officer of Procter & Gamble, the largest vendor of advertising. And I was in market research, testing all of their ads. And I was sitting on the dais with the chief research officer, and I whispered to him, I said, Larry, when's the right time to come and talk to you about online research? And he said, next week. Oh. And I come off the stage, and my bosses that were all men were like, what did you talk to him about? What were you whispering about? What happened? I said, I just asked him, when is the right time to come in and pitch online research? And he said, next week. And my boss is like, okay, wow, that's amazing. Jim will go, Paul will go, Ringo will go, and Star will go. And I'm like, but what about Shelley? And at the time, it was a very predominantly
male-dominated.
It was a male-dominated world. And I said, well, if I'm not going, I'm going to cancel the meeting, and you all can wait for the right time.
Good for you.
And that was that. And it was that moment of truth for me that I'm going to follow my heart and pursue my path of the unknown.
And putting your stake in the ground.
And putting my stake in the ground. And I remember going to Nielsen, and I had been working with a developer on website testing. I was doing usability testing. You remember those days when we were testing websites, usability testing. And I said to this guy, Trevor Kaufman, I said, Trevor, would you work with me on building an online research platform, like an online research website? And I said, I don't have any money.
On this, like a side hustle, just like a side project. Yeah. I'm curious to see
work
if we
in my
can
basement, side hustle. Yeah. I said, let's just see. I said, because I can't go pitch anyone if I don't have something to show them. Because no one is going to understand what I'm talking about because it's never been done before. And I said, I don't have any money, but the day someone says yes to me, I will give you $1 million. He was 21. And I went to Nielsen and I said, I have this crazy idea to migrate research from offline to online. What do you think? And they said, we're in. And they said, what do you need? I said, I need $1 million. And I handed a young person $1 million. And he built the platform and did the research for us for a year.
I have the chills.
And it was a really amazing moment because it was someone that was just like me that says yes, believes, and then what is it we're going to do? And I'll never forget that. And I so appreciate that spirit and that conviction and that mindset. It's a yes mindset. It's not looking at the impossible. It's making the impossible possible. And that all starts with believing. Mm-hmm. And so that was a miraculous moment. And then I needed, my business was growing and I needed some more money. And I was going to get it from my father and my husband. They both were going to give me another $1 million. And I thought to myself, if I took their money, for us, for my husband and I, we were, my husband is a doctor, but he was just starting out. That was a lot of, it's a lot of money at any stage of life. It was a lot of money. And I thought if I risked our money, I would play it safe. I wouldn't take chances. If I was always thinking about, I shouldn't spend that nickel, I shouldn't spend that dime, I would have played it safe. And if you're truly building something that doesn't exist, you got to take risk. Mm-hmm. You got to be willing to fail before you succeed. And I knew I would have a safe mindset if I was always thinking about
the bottom line with his money. Yeah, family money.
That we didn't have.
Yeah.
I just, it was too risky. And I didn't feel, even though I am a self-taught entrepreneur, I don't think an entrepreneur, you can learn anything from a textbook. I just knew in my gut that if I took money that I didn't have, that was going to potentially not allow me to buy a house down the road or not educate my children when I had them, or whatever it wasn't the right move for me. Because for me, I need this unencumbered mindset where I'm just going to be daring and be bold and be brave and put myself out there, and I didn't want anything holding me back. So that is my journey, and from there, I ended up building the fastest growing research company in 9 years, and I sold it to Ipsos 8 years ago, and it's been an amazing ride.
It's incredible. I think it also, I've interviewed so many women who come in here, and the one quality that they all share is that they're gamers. They're just gamers. And they notice surround themselves with people who are also yes people. And not yes people, sort of anything you ask them, they're just going to say yes to. But yes, I get the vision. And even if I don't fully get the vision, I'm game to go on the journey with you. Because I often have people who start to work for me and they get flustered. They don't understand what we're doing. And I'm like, it's okay. You might not be right for this project. And that's okay. We can find a different project for you to work on. I know I have people working for me who don't really understand the full vision, no matter how much we communicate it, but they're just so game to be on the journey. Yeah. And we honestly, sometimes you don't know where things are going to end up.
But that's what makes it so
exciting. It's so exciting. But you have to let go of the people who are the no people.
It just doesn't work. And we need those kind of people in the world.
Yes.
Those are execution people and people that really you can depend on to
keep us a little grounded sometimes.
Keep us grounded and to continue to color in the lines.
Of course.
But I've been well known as a chief troublemaker. I've been a CEO my whole life, but being a chief troublemaker, I break all the rules that don't make sense and create new ones. And being uncomfortable is okay for me. I got comfortable being uncomfortable. And when I get uncomfortable,
you have to have
I know
the
I'm
stomach
stretching
for it.
myself,
yes.
And I'm pushing myself to that next limit, even when I didn't have permission to be uncomfortable. Now I can take some more, some bigger risks. Mm-hmm. At the time, I didn't have permission to take those risks, but I did. And it got me comfortable being uncomfortable. And I think that's really one of the most important things if you are going to be an entrepreneurial, individual and innovate and transform and disrupt a little, you have to be uncomfortable.
It's a famous Navy SEAL saying, by the way.
I love
Get comfortable being uncomfortable. And I did an entire TEDx talk around that one concept because I think it applies to everything in life, right? If we want to grow, if we want to experience intimacy and grow, we have to get uncomfortable in conversations with our partners. It's on a micro level and on a macro level. It's brilliant. I also heard you say at one point in one of the articles that you're in, don't apologize.
Yeah.
Don't apologize. And I think women do that so often. We apologize for ideas, or we apologize for stepping on people's toes, or, not wanting to disrupt anything, to be the sort of mediator in the room.
Yeah, well, listen, sorry, not sorry.
Yeah.
That's just what we have to own. And, women have been taught and socialized to be nice. And it is very important to be kind and benevolent and caring. Very, very important. But it's also okay to talk about money and talk about power. They're not taboo words. They're very important words if we truly want to get ahead in life. And we apologize all the time. For what? It's because we have that voice in our head that we're not good enough, we're not bold enough, we're not brave enough, we're not qualified, we're too strong, we're too bossy, we're too this, we're too that. But why? We're perfect. We're perfect for who we are if we just accept that. And my girlfriend, Wendy Clark, always says, you just got to shut that bitch up in your head and stop apologizing.
Get rid of that mean girl. Get rid of her.
Get rid of, Ariana Huffington says it's the obnoxious roommate. Get rid of that obnoxious roommate in your head. Because men don't think that way.
No.
They might think that way, but they'll never share it, and they won't act accordingly.
I interviewed Valerie Young recently, who wrote the sort of defining book on imposter syndrome. And we talked a lot about the statistics that are out there. And I was fascinated to hear some of the ones that I know you have the ability to share on when they do blind studies, to see how when they do blind studies, women get chosen sometimes more than men, let's say if they're playing the violin behind a curtain. But the minute that you show that it's a woman up there, a man's going to get chosen in front of a woman. And unfortunately, this is still happening.
Well, I'm spending a lot of time talking about unconscious bias these
Yes.
days. I think unconscious bias is an excuse for not doing anything. Subliminally, we're unconscious. If I've just made you conscious that there's a wage gap and that women on average make 80 cents on the dollar, black women 63 cents on the dollar, Latinas 54 cents on the dollar, and if I make you conscious of the fact that the policies in the workplace don't work for women rising to the top because we tend to fall out in the messy middle, the middle management, and if I tell you that, stereotypes hold women back, personally and professionally, it's no longer unconscious because I made you conscious. So now you're conscious. Now it's a choice. But stop hiding behind unconscious bias for inactivity and inaction. It's not a good excuse anymore. And so I'm not going to let people get away with using the words unconscious bias. It's an unconscious bias. No, it's a conscious bias. If you're still making these choices and creating these gaps, it's conscious because you are aware of the fact that there is an inequity.
And I think that you need to go on Fox in place of me to talk to Tucker about this because I was recently on Fox talking about the wage gap and he said it actually doesn't exist. Did you know that? And started pulling out all sort of these studies that he had at the top of his, tongue, at the tip of his tongue about how the wage gap doesn't exist. And I think you need to go to battle for me there.
First of all, we go together.
Yes.
Wherever you go, I go with you.
I go too.
Let's just put
definitely
that
right there.
But I think that is also the problem with when you look at AI, artificial intelligence. There's a predominance of men in technology. What goes in comes out. So if you have a male mind creating the structure within AI and the path that different decisions, the decision tree of what happens, you have the same male voice coming out. And that's why we need both perspectives. You can always find what you're looking for. You can find that there's no wage gap because you've decided you don't really want to look for it. As a matter of fact...
Or that white privilege exists.
Or the white privilege... 61% of women want to share their salaries, transparency. Only 38% of men do. Wonder why. So it's easy to try to hide the truth.
It's amazing what came out in London recently,
100%.
in England. For those of you who don't know, they passed a law there where they made everybody companies show what people were making, and banks like Jeffries were not doing so hot.
Yeah, it's a big issue, and it's what Mark Benioff says from Salesforce, the CEO of Salesforce.
Yeah.
It's a one-button push today. Technology is an enabler. Push the button if you choose to. Some people want
to live in the dark.
Want to live in the dark
because it's
a lot
advantageous.
Easier. Well, it's the same thing why we don't like to try new things because it's scary. We don't know what to expect. Playing it safe is closing your eyes. Putting yourself out there is pushing the button. Push the button. Figure out where the inequity is. And by the way, if you're going to push the button, you're going to need to follow through. So that's the scary part. Don't push the button until you're ready to take action. Push the button. He realized there was a $3 million delta between male-female salaries, same job. He closed it. He didn't talk about it.
He did it.
He didn't say he was going to try. He did it. As Yoda says, you either do it or you don't. He did it. It pinched. But now he'll get comfortable being uncomfortable.
Well, and the reality too is that you elevate the business. Businesses who are inclusive, who have more diverse teams, both gender, socioeconomic, certainly some education level, race, sexuality. We don't necessarily ask about that when we're interviewing people. They perform better.
34% better, which is really an astounding statistic. And you talked about the Navy SEALs. I mean, I was obsessed with the video of the Navy SEAL talking about making his bed. Did you see that one?
Yes.
He says, if you can't do the easy things, you certainly can't do the hard things. So make your bed every morning. And even if you have a shitty day, you come home and your bed is made, and it was made by you. And then he talks about the best performing boats are the ones with diversity, not the ones that all have the same, guys with strength, the same size, same weight, same muscle strength. But the boats that perform the best are those with diversity, with men, with women, with gender, race, age, mindset. Those boats always outperform the boats with the same types of people in it. Great example.
Well, and I think that leads back to, I interviewed a Navy SEAL once named Larry Yatch, who's a great guy. I'll have to introduce you to him. And he said to me that he did a lot of studying as to why he made it through SEAL training program when he was the guy who shouldn't have. He wasn't necessarily the smartest in the room. He wasn't the strongest. He wasn't the most physically fit. But he was obsessed with why do some guys make it through training and other guys don't? And he said that they have the ability to face adversity. They've just are people, kids who've grown up facing a lot of adversity. And so when you grow up other in this culture, whether it's a woman or a black person, what have you, whatever other is deemed, you generally have to face quite a bit of adversity. So you have that resilience there. And I think that can easily carry over into business.
I think resilience is, I would not be where I am today if I wasn't resilient. Because, you can get knocked down a lot and people telling you you're not right and you're not this and you're not that, but you got to own that strength. Oscar Wilde says, be yourself because everyone else is taken. And it is so true. And being different is a good thing. Mm-hmm. But when you are different from others, I was always the black sheep that had to become the new white, really rewriting the rules to become the new norm. Mm-hmm. But I had to start by going there. And it's not popular zagging when others are zigging. It's a lot easier following the path that everyone else is following. Sure. It's really hard to go in a different direction and get everyone to understand that that's not wrong.
Did you have family support, emotional family support? It sounds like you had a supportive father, a supportive husband.
Amazing support. It's why I coined the phrase confidence is beautiful. It's not what you look like on the outside, it's how you feel on the inside. And confidence and power of the pack truly are magical ingredients for success. I have 3 children who are amazing. Jake is 21, senior at University of Michigan. My daughter Nikki, who's 23, works for Jen Meyer doing marketing and social media in her jewelry company. And my son Alex is 27. He works for Google in small agencies and AdWords. And since the time my kids were growing up, they've always been supportive. They know that I work because I love it. It's a choice. And my husband, I always say partnership starts at home. There was no traditional mother-father role, even though as a boomer I should be, have the traditional, this is mom's job, this is dad's. We were co-parents and we shared responsibility. And my kids are independent, assertive, decisive, caring, nurturing, and I think they respect that they have 2 parents that work and have a life, so that we're not, claustrophobic on top of them, needing to live our lives through them. I think that they really do appreciate that.
I think this is a great way to segue into what you're doing now, which I want you to talk about, which is the Female Quotient, and creating these girls clubs all over the place, not just in corporations or at conferences, but also now you're going to start launching them in universities. What I think is so crucial about this conversation is that so many women don't have that emotional support at home. So many people don't have what Radha Arwal, who started Thinks Underwear, says is a fuck yeah friend. Yep. They don't have it. I certainly got a lot of pushback from my family. I'd gotten a very traditional education. Why can't you just follow the traditional path? Then I got divorced. Why don't you, what is this whole entrepreneur thing? Why do you keep creating? Go take a job as a school counselor and just call it a day. You'll have your summers off and you'll be home by 3 o'clock every day. And there's nothing wrong with that job. I just knew in my heart that wasn't me. And so what you're creating is that wolf pack outside of the family unit. And it's crucial because we forget that there are women out there trying to do these things, trying to disrupt markets, having visions, wanting to run businesses, wanting to create jobs in America, create revenue for themselves and for other people, and they don't have anybody to go to. They have a lot of resistance, whether it's at home or within the environment that they're already in business-wise. So can you talk a little bit about what happened and how you started Female Quotient?
So Madeleine Albright always says, women that don't support other women deserve a place in hell.
Yes.
We say women that support other women deserve a place in heaven. And when you think about it, we start 50-50 in the workplace. We end at about 17%, dropping quickly with Indra Nooyi stepping down from PepsiCo, publicly acknowledging that A, she's tired, and B, she wants to spend more time with her family, which was really sharing her vulnerability, which was quite beautiful.
I have
and
the
refreshing.
chills as you're talking about
it,
this.
It was amazing. Yes. Anyways, Where we fall off is in middle management.
Of course.
I have a column in Forbes 5 times a month called The Messy Middle, and it really talks about our challenges because caregiving is still predominantly a female issue. And then, of course, all the quote-unquote unconscious bias that kicks in against women that we all are aware of, which is holding us back from rising to the top. And so we talk about diversity being good for business, and yet we're going backwards. So I created a company called the Female Quotient. First came the intelligence quotient, IQ. We all talked about IQ. Then came the emotional quotient, EQ. Now comes the female quotient, FQ. When you put women in any equation, the equation gets better. And my tagline, I'm in the business of equality. Because we can't just fix one piece of empowering women and advancing women. We also have to rewrite the rules in the workplace. So there's 4 pillars of my company. Pillar 1 is called the Girls Lounge. There's a boys club, now there's a girls lounge. We've connected over 17,000 corporate women globally and entrepreneurial women as well to become a community, to really create power of the pack. Women supporting other women, having conversations about work-life balance, negotiation, challenges we've all had, but not just conforming to the rules that were written, having this power force to break some of those rules.
The networking.
It's a huge, more business is done in our lounges than anywhere else. And Katharine Hepburn says it best. She says, if you obey all the rules, you miss all the fun. So we have...
well, and you're also creating... I remember talking to somebody about funding about 2 years ago, and he said, well, why don't you just go ask your friends? And I said, let me ask you a question. Who did you last give funding to? And he said, a few of my guy friends who were starting companies. And I said, and where were those deals made? He said, on the golf course of my country club.
100%.
I said, yeah, don't have the golf course, don't have the country club, and my girlfriends don't have the access to capital that you do or the other men that you surround yourselves do. It's just not how most of us
we have
function.
Each other's back. Like we're all running huge budgets.
But now, and you're connecting those women together.
Connecting, and they're connecting, and they're paying it forward with generosity. And so we do Girls Lounge at conferences. We do Girls Lounge at Custom. So we go in and create communities of women inside of big organizations or at conferences that we're not at that a company wants to bring us to. And we're about to roll out permanent girls' lounges in university campuses in 116 countries.
What was your idea about wanting to go into universities?
Twofold. One, to help young women, before they get into the workplace, learn how to run businesses, find their voice, own their strength, create that confidence to know they can be anything they want to be. And the second was to create a recruiting hub for Fortune 500 companies to fill the pipeline with strong, confident women from college networks, so to recruit in the lounges as well. And third, to create a space for getting more girls in STEM, because when you have the majority acting and feeling like, when you have the minority acting and feeling like the majority, that's when you flip the balance, transform culture, and everyone feels like they belong. And so we are partnering, and SAP is an amazing company, gave us access to spaces in over 3,800 universities. So we'll be opening these spaces, and there's our next gen labs for tech. So it's a great way to get, by calling it a girls lounge, a great way to get more and encourage more women with confidence to go into
technology,
STEM and STEAM, careers. So that's pillar 1. Pillar 2, we'll be launching FQ Talent, a talent agency for senior level women inside of corporations to bring more visibility to women doing remarkable things. The third pillar is the equality practice. It's rewriting the rules. I told you I'm a chief troublemaker. I break the rules that make no sense, rewrite them for today's modern workplace. So going into Fortune 500 companies, working with leadership, men and women, leadership is still predominantly men, on the rules that don't make sense.
Right.
From parity, closing the gap, and diversity and supplier relations, to advancement, mentorship, sponsorship, coaching, and not just coaching the women, coaching the men too. Men today also need education and awareness in the post-movement era of, what people feel comfortable with and not. The third is culture, from policies to training. Textbook training does not work. We need mindset training. And the fourth is leadership. Values, communication of those values, and most importantly, accountability for change. If we don't have accountability for change, we will keep talking about the problems, but we'll never activate the solutions for change. So, and the fourth pillar, as women, we always want to give back with generosity. So it's called FQ Impact. we created a confidence collection, which are T-shirts and
which is very cool,
collection.
by the way.
Oh yeah,
it's my whole team yesterday was sitting on. They're like, "This is amazing."
But they're talking.
Yes.
They're talking tees. So you can take a picture and it unlocks advice for women, and then the money we raise. They're amazing. And then the money we raise, we give to 501c3s, not for profits that help educate women around the world. So it's our Give Back with Generosity pillar.
I have to ask you, because you're sitting here and you're absolute gold. How do you feel about everything, given the whole Me Too movement and what's happened over the last 12 to 24 months in the States? This is the thing that if I'm at a dinner, I'm going to a benefit tomorrow night in Washington, D.C., I get cornered by men constantly when I'm out and about asking me about these questions. What's your feeling on it? Do you think that there's going to be pushback? I have heard from men, unfortunately, that a lot of them are saying, now we just are avoiding having women on teams on the down low, and that's pretty scary.
Yeah. So 50% of men today don't want to work with women because they're afraid to do or say the wrong thing. Mm-hmm. And once accused, right or wrong,
it can ruin a person's life. Yeah.
And by the way, there are plenty of good men. So it is affecting the good men the most. Sheryl Sandberg just did a study with SurveyMonkey, and what she says is if you don't want to take a woman to lunch alone, then don't take a man to lunch alone.
Yes.
Like, you can't create these different, thresholds. I think the movements have been amazing for breaking the silence, and they've been amazing for creating consequence for bad behavior. But now we have to move towards positive, proactive solutions moving forward. And that's why I talk a lot about the golden rule: do unto others as you'd want done to yourself. But what might be good for me might not be good for you. So now we're embracing the platinum rule: do unto others as they'd want done to themselves.
Can you repeat that one more time?
The platinum rule.
Yes.
Do unto others as they'd want done to themselves.
I just want everyone to hear that.
Because it is about understanding the individuality and respecting everyone for who they are. And so if you told me I look nice as a 56-year-old, I'm going to say thank you. But maybe someone else doesn't feel comfortable. A 21-year-old might not be comfortable with that. And what I talk to young people about is, before you accuse that person of sexual harassment, first make them aware that it bothers you. Just say, I'm sorry, that makes me uncomfortable. Please don't do that anymore. Now, if they continue to do it, shame on them. But we do have a new day and age of awareness and education. We all need to be educated in this post-movement era, because new things are now coming to surface that we didn't identify before. We never talked about it before. We all just pushed it under the table. We swept it under the table. I guess that's the expression. We swept it under the table and just didn't acknowledge it. Mm-hmm. Now we are. And once acknowledged, it's no longer unconscious. Now it's conscious. And that's what we need to become attuned to.
And have these difficult conversations.
And have these difficult conversations where we can create environments, cultures inside of the workplace that we all feel safe, we all feel secure, creating a culture of care, we all feel we belong, and we can all thrive. And I think that those are really important things that, in my opinion, the best leaders today have a conscious mindset, understanding this is where we are and this is where we need to go, and how am I going to get us there?
It's a combination of education, bringing your human to work, which I love that line. I know it's a book by Erica. Yeah, this is great. And I also think it's about spiritual leadership. It's just there's an element of, we talk about the emotional side effects of everything, the body side effects of everything, and then we have the spiritual side effects of everything. That's spiritual. What you're talking right there is spiritual leadership, and that's not defined by any sort of religious affiliation.
And by the way, there's no accountability. Like, I'd love to see a CEO's description of Fortune 500 company saying, we are looking for a CEO that is going to create a culture of care through nurturing and empathetic and conscious mindset leadership, and also, by the way, be able to deliver the bottom line. Mm-hmm. Like, let's rewrite that description.
Which is actually bringing your full human to work, that you can't cut off certain parts of yourself.
We love Erica, and she really is starting to talk about the human, and I think that is very important, and it does require a new lexicon. Because when we start using new language, it pushes us there versus retrofitting that, it creates this new there. And I think that that's very important.
I think what you're talking about also has to do with empathy. That there's a quality of empathy that leaders need to bring into the room and to model for people, that respecting someone else comes from a deep place of empathy for another human
100%.
being.
Listen, we did a Men of Action Summit a couple of weeks ago. We had 42 male speakers. And, because I don't want to have these topics be taboo topics. I just want to go for it and get it out on the table.
Well, we need men in the room. It's ridiculous to have the conversation only with women.
Well, women are 50% of the population, so we can't transform. No. We actually respelled feminism to put the word men in feminism. So it's FEMENISM. Modern feminism must include men. I always say Gloria Steinem, feminism 1.0. I call it she for she. Women supporting other women, women believing in themselves. She doesn't, but I think it's very cool. Feminism 2.0, he for she, United Nations, Emma Watson, bringing men into the conversation. But he for she makes us an equal.
Yes.
It makes
and that there's no shame for men to say, I support women.
So we say feminism 3.0, put the word men in feminism, we for we. We're all in this together. And this gender equality is not a female issue. It's a social and economic issue.
Absolutely.
And by the way, if we close the pay gap, according to McKinsey, we could put over $28 trillion to the global GDP by 2025. So it's not even a nice to have.
No, these are business decisions as well. I understand.
So, I think all these things come into play.
Before we end, what drives you to keep doing this work now? Here you've had all the success. You could be sitting on a beach.
I thought it was
nice
dream.
Come on.
That's what this happened by accident. I would not have written this script.
Where's the drive and the passion come from? What's the need?
I always say when purpose meets passion, you're unstoppable.
Yeah.
And I'm purpose driven. I know what I felt like as a woman in business, and I did not have, female role models that were quote unquote doing it all their way. They conform to the rules because they were supposed to. And so I thought, I've got to walk the talk. And this was my time to do this and leave this legacy, and at least start moving the needle. I think it's a journey, it's definitely a journey, but this is just my time. And most importantly, the feeling of having the power of the pack with me along every step of the way. It's not only really fun, it's making a difference. It's making a statement. We are rewriting the rules. We have unbelievable men and women, because it's a leadership issue, working together. And I never want to look back in life. I have a no regret policy and say shoulda, woulda, coulda. And so this is my moment, and I gotta take it.
I couldn't help but think there's something a little bit heavy, which was ultimately what you're on the journey of doing is helping to end human suffering. Bottom line, because you want everybody to experience the same freedoms and opportunities that anybody else has the right to have, and to raise everybody's level of standard of living. And that's a gorgeous, gorgeous legacy to leave. And I thank you so much for being here today.
Oh, it's like Dorothy. She always had the power to go home. She just had to click her heels. We all have the power to make a difference if we believe in ourselves and raise our hands and take responsibility. And it doesn't have to be big steps. Some of us can only take little steps, but every step in a forward direction is a positive moment in the momentum of energy force pushing us to the next step. And so,
and you will find your tribe. That's the thing. You've created tribe, you've created community, and we all want that feeling of belonging. And it's, even if you're only taking little steps, sometimes you have to do that so alone and so in such a solo way for so long until you bump into that tribe and go, yes, I am home. And now we can really impact change because there's more of us trying to do the same thing. And so I thank you for gathering us all together.
Well, I just want to be part of your tribe wherever you go.
Please,
so count me in.
Awesome. Thank you. I'm a hugger.
Oh, me too.
Thanks so much for listening to today's episode of Unscripted with Nell Daly. If you could right now, we need you to head on over and review us on iTunes. As always, we will personally reach out and thank each and every one of you who do so, but we'd love your reviews, so tell us what you think. And you can always send us emails with either guests you want on the show or comments or questions. We're happy to get those, and you can find those on the website. Our contact information at nelldaily.com. To see all of my comings and goings, get updates on who our next guests are going to be, and if you just need a little bit of extra life advice or inspiration, come join me over on Instagram at Nell Daily. I use Instagram every single day. Or like us over on Facebook, and you'll automatically be following us, and that's at Nell Given Daily. That's also where you can watch us live. Before I end, I want to thank our audio editor, Walter Eggers, our video editor and co-producer, Paige McGovern, and our video production manager, Rick Endiver, co-producer, Corey Pakowski, and the rest of the Point Zero Media team. I couldn't do any of this without you. I couldn't. Of course, Teachable HQ, you guys rock. They're an amazing educational technology company. Check them out. I use them. Everybody big in the business uses them. They're just awesome. And a huge shout out of gratitude. Huge. The biggest to all the fans who are following the show. Just like I said last week, I am so humbled by how this is all going. Thank you. Until Monday, everybody, peace out. Have a fun and safe weekend. I love you guys already.